Welcome to Still Speak Podcast. This is yet another update on missing Gabby Petito. I've done quite a few of these. This story is a mystery like the Murdaugh story, but it in its own right and has, so many twists and turns. Goodness, I can't hardly keep up. I made an almost hour-long video last night with more updates, and I also did some speculating about the case at the end, so don't miss that. It's on the channel. I'm not going to repeat stuff from that video, or at least I'm going to try not to. I will make a playlist for Gabby's videos like I did for the Murdaugh and Summer Wells cases, so that way you can have all the videos in one spot. I'm doing this because sometimes it's so hard with life and work and kids, etc., to take time and sit through and read through every post, trying to figure out, the facts from the rumors, and to keep up with every article that comes out and every interview that comes out. And so, I'm watching on and off all day, and I'm taking what I feel is relevant, or that's a fact, or that are statements, and I'm compiling them in a video so that you can listen to it while you're driving or cooking or cleaning or whatever. I wear an earbud all day. Wireless earbuds are life, by the way. I don't even know how I was surviving before without wireless earbuds, because I just love them. I listen all day long. Like I said, like when I'm cooking or driving or at the dentist with my kid, everywhere that you can think of, so I can stay up to date. So I'm doing these to try to make this easier for you. Today, body cam footage was released about the domestic incident that was reported about Gabby and Brian on August 12th. I read you the incident report in last night's video, and then the body cam footage came out today. And I shared the body cam footage to all my social media platform pages and on this channel as well, which reminds me, if you've not followed me yet on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok, please do. I set up those platforms so videos or posts can be shared on every platform, especially when someone is missing, so we can get the information out as fast as possible to as many people as possible all over the place. I listened earlier to the press conference that was done by the Northport Police that began at 12 o'clock. And really, they didn't have much update. Her father spoke briefly, and it was a lot of the same stuff, reiterating it all. And, they did say that it was still a missing person case, which of course it is. That makes sense. It's not a criminal case yet number one, no one knows where Gabby is. 2, testing on the van hasn't come back yet. It takes time. Number 3, getting phone calls and cell records and pings and all that stuff takes time. And 4, processing tips takes time. And they always, in these cases, get inundated with, rumors or speculation and these random people who want 5 minutes of fame calling them in tips and sending them in different directions that they don't need to be going. And so you have to, weed through all of those, and it takes time. So far, without Brian speaking, it's just a missing person case. We don't know if it's going to be a crime, this was a crime, and that there'll be a criminal case. I do want to talk about the body cam footage. I was able to review most of it this morning, but I was with my kid at an appointment, so I had to wait until this evening so that I can really give it my attention and watch it, fully and make notes on it. There's a whole lot of talk about this footage, and I think people are taking some things from it that really doesn't need to be, looking a little too hard at certain things when you don't need to be. And it's over an hour long. They spent a lot of time with them. I was actually really shocked by that. Here are things that stuck out to me, and it will not be in any particular order. I'm just going to go down my notes. It made me uneasy when Brian said to the police, "I'm fine," in regards to the scratches that were on him. He then said, "I hope she didn't have any complaints about me." And then he did this nervous laugh. this could just be that he was worried that she would lie, but it also made me wonder if he knew that he did something and he was nervous that she might actually tell. He did a lot of nervous laughing, actually, to be honest. And as somebody who does nervous laughing, I know what nervous laughing is. Okay, I do the same thing. And he had a lot of it. There was 3 officer vehicles on the side of the road with them. I mean, this was like a big scene. This wasn't like just one officer pulling over this couple. This was like a scene. Like, if you were driving past, it's the kind of scene that you would have looked over and like held up traffic. You know what I'm saying? To see what the heck's going on over there. I'm sure this made it extra worrisome for them, both Gabby and Brian, because it was basically them against these officers plus the witness, right? And I think there is many times where they actually try to downplay what happened due to the fear of, all these officers. And I said last night, I think them mentioning mental illness may have been a way to kind of explain away why there was a dispute. And I also think saying they were engaged when we heard that they had called it off but remained dating was another way to kind of calm down the copper. And I call him Copper. The Copper Man. Like, calm down, Mr. Copper Man. It's all good. We're engaged. We're in love. Nothing to worry about here. He's my future husband. We're all good. Like, kind of just trying to be like, don't worry. We're good. I could be wrong, but that is what came to my mind. And it also struck me, Gabby basically said that they had an awful morning or day together. And he acted and was speaking like, meh, it was a good day until we had our moment. So which is it? Was it an awful day or was it a good day? Nobody knows. One big thing that came to mind as I watched and listened to Brian was that he was very friendly, very open, and very conversational with these officers, which is a far cry from the man who has remained, completely silent. Gabby, right at the start of the video, blamed herself and seemed greatly upset with herself, not him, and blamed herself, saying that she was mean. I want to say that this may, hear me, may be a sign of abuse, because typically in abusive relationships, the one being abused often blames themselves, or they repeat what has been said to them. I do not think I often say, I was mean, like she did. My husband might say to me, you're being mean, or why are you being so damn mean? But I don't think I ever really said, I'm being, I was mean. I might say, like, I'm in a bad mood, or I was in a bad mood. I mean, same difference, but to say, like, I was mean just struck me odd. And, she blamed herself, and he blamed her too. I didn't really see him take much ownership on what transpired, and more times than not, in a dispute, both ends up doing something wrong during that argument. Now, he did mention that he pushed her out of the way because she went to go slap him, but it didn't feel like he thought that this was something bad that he did. I'm not saying he should have just taken the slap, but at the same time, pushing her face away probably wasn't the best choice. I think there is a possibility that Gabby yanked the wheel because Brian had no plans to stop for the officer. The officer even said that it took him a while to catch up with them because of the speed that he was going. I mean, even if she yanked the wheel, she's not the one who made it go 45 miles per hour in a 20 to 25 mile per hour zone, right? So he was already not driving accordingly with a cop behind him. Like, he didn't slow down. I mean, don't we all do that? Like, you see a cop, especially one that's behind you, or you're passing one, and you're like, oh, slam on that brake. Let me slow down, right? So the fact that he didn't slow down when the officer was behind him, and that she even had to let him know that the cop was behind them, and that he didn't know that, tells me that there's this possibility, that once he did know and he didn't slow down, that he may have been making a decision to not stop for whatever reason. I don't know why. There could be all kinds of reasons. I don't know why people do that. Or the people who fight with cops, like, I'm always like, what, if you comply, we're good, right? Now, obviously, in some situations, you have a bad cop, but more often than not, you have good ones. I'm seeing a lot of talk in groups after this video came out about Gabby being, quote, unstable, unquote, during this event, but I see just an emotionally distraught woman who is human and has feelings. I was a young girl once, and we're super dramatic and at that age, and our feelings get hurt easily and we get really emotional. A lot of girls are like that, so I didn't really see her being unstable. We have no idea what happened in the car after the police had been called, and we don't know what happened prior to what the witness saw. She may have been so emotional because of whatever had happened in that van prior to the cops stopping them, or from what had happened earlier before the witness had seen them. But I think we need to be careful here, because we shouldn't blow off someone, male or female, who is expressing emotion and chalk it up and say, well, they're unstable. I mean, expressing emotion doesn't automatically mean that you're unstable. And women are more outwardly emotional than men are a lot of the time. And there was also mention of mental illness, which we don't know for sure still about. If it's true, then basically calling her unstable is kind of harsh, because of course she would be if she's suffering from a mental illness. But I gotta say, I'm a big law enforcement supporter, but these were some of the nicest officers I think I've ever seen. They definitely handled the situation accordingly up until the end. And people were saying today maybe he knew that this was documented, so when something else happened, he thought that he would be screwed, and this is why he took off. And I'm going to have to disagree with you after seeing how calm and nice they were, especially to Brian. They made it very clear he was the victim. And so Brian didn't really have a reason to fear calling the cops if something else happened and being like, dude, remember when you pulled us over and you put me in a hotel? Well, she went crazy again. Come help find her, come help, she hit me, I pushed her, she's unconscious, whatever. I mean, these cops were so nice to him that, like, they gave him a reason to contact them if something else happened again. Like, they weren't scary cops. And he was, like, worried, like, oh my gosh, I can't call them again. But he didn't do that. He didn't do that. He didn't contact any type of law enforcement out there, regardless of what happened. None. If she took off, he didn't report her. If she was abducted, he didn't report her. If she fell off a cliff, he didn't report her. If she committed suicide, he didn't report her. What gives? Which brings me to when Brian was asked if, she was on medication, he said, not that I know of. She's just crazy. I mean, that's so dismissive. Oh, goodness, it's dismissive. And again, if she has a mental illness, and that's a fact, and he knows that, that's a really unfair thing to say about her, and it kind of gives us a smidge of a glimpse into how he may view her. It's just a little strange that he would basically call her crazy. Especially when she's sitting in the back of a car, like, sobbing mess. Near the end, one of the officers said to Gabby, only you can answer this question, so think before you answer. And then he basically asked her if she intended to harm Brian. And I found this to be so ironic, because the tables have now turned, and only Brian can now answer where she is. I feel bad for the officers right now. I can't imagine what's going through their heads, seeing all of this, and thinking, we thought she was the aggressor, and they thought that they were doing the right thing by separating them to cool off, and now she's the one who's missing, and no one knows why, again, because of Brian. So could you imagine what they're thinking? They're thinking, oh God, what the hell? Did we make a mistake? So I feel really bad for them. Brian also mentioned not liking plastic bottles because, polluting the environment. And this struck me because he cares about plastic bottles, but he doesn't care about helping her family to locate his missing girlfriend. Okay, bro. It was said in the video that they had been living and traveling in that van for 4 to 5 months, but we know Gabby went to New York mid-June, and then they left on this trip the beginning of July. So really, at the time of this video, it was 2 months if he had went with her in the van to New York. Were they staying in the van prior to this trip? Because it didn't sound that way, but now I'm kind of wondering. At first, I was bothered that they let, and by they, I mean Brian and the officers, let Gabby drive off in that van in her emotional state during a possible mental health crisis. But then I thought about it. The van was hers, so likely that was why that was done, why she was the one to drive off in the van. That being said, though, I think it should have been asked and noted where she had planned to go, with the van. This petite young girl who doesn't know the area, doesn't have any protection, there's tourists everywhere, she's all alone, and it was never asked, where are you going to stay? Where are you taking the van and parking it to stay? So that we can make a note of it and check on you and make sure you're okay, or give you a call and make sure you're okay. Whatever. It was they just let her go, and it's okay, well, you made sure Brian got to this hotel okay. Why wasn't there there's several people there. Why didn't one of them follow her to make sure that she got to where she was going to go okay? Now, there was an officer there that we didn't see her interactions with Gabby. Maybe that body cam footage will come out later, and maybe that officer did make sure that she went someplace and knew where she went. But as far as we know at this point, we don't know if that was done. Many people are talking about Brian's demeanor, and off this video alone, they think he seems really calm and collected, and so therefore he could not have hurt her. How many of you have been pulled over by the cops and your heart rate went up and you got real nervous? I'm sure all of you have, right? And what happens is we go into basically survival mode, self-preservation. You're going to try to diffuse the situation to get yourself out of whatever it is, whether it's a ticket or going to jail. No one acts like themselves in front of a cop after being pulled over. They just don't. So we can't really go fully off their behaviors in this video and use it as a baseline for their personalities, because they were going to be acting a certain way because of the cop, okay? The officer asked if he can afford a hotel and then got him a hotel. Did Brian not even have the money for a one-night stay in a hotel? I mean, surely he did if they're on this cross-country trip. Because the next day, or a few days later, she stayed in a hotel and he flew home. Unless her parents paid for the hotel and his parents paid for his plane ticket, I have no idea. But why couldn't he put himself up in a hotel? And I noticed that Brian never mentioned that he was going to Florida. I was expecting him to say, yeah, I'm going back home in a few days or tomorrow, and her and I will get this really much needed break from each other. But he never said that. So that tells me that he likely went back to Florida on a spur-of-the-moment type thing, because why wouldn't you mention that? Like, you know what, officer, I understand you want to separate us tonight, and that's fine. It's okay, because I'm about to go home to Florida anyways, too, and that will give us even more time apart and give us a little break from each other. But that didn't happen. At the end of the video, the cop brings up Brian, going to Yosemite. He's like, yeah, you gotta go there, you gotta go to Sequoia National Park. And this caught my attention because Gabby's last text said no service in Yosemite, and Yosemite's in California, and they were up by Yellowstone, and the plan was to go to Yellowstone. And this is one of the texts that her parents do not believe were her. And last night I said, if it was not her, I have to wonder if it's saying Yosemite was intentional and done to confuse her parents on her location, to throw them off course in finding her. I think that's a very big possibility. Or to buy more time. Like, oh, well, we've been out of service all this time, so... Or was it just a simple autocorrect issue? That's possible, too. A friend of Gabby's, though, said, today, she wanted to be anonymous, that she had plans to meet up with Gabby in Yellowstone after this friend's birthday, and this friend's birthday was the 29th, and she last texted with Gabby on the 27th. She said there's no way that she took off without telling her family. And then Gabby said in the beginning that she was afraid Brian was going to leave her stranded, and that was why she forced herself into the car during this incident. But when Brian was discussing the incident, he said he didn't have his phone, and he was afraid that she was going to take off in the van, leaving him stranded. So that's why he got in the car to lock her out, because he didn't want to be left behind. And obviously, the great irony here is that she ends up being the one left behind. The fact he was worried about her leaving him stranded, though, makes me wonder if he had tried that before, and that's why he thought that she would do it to him. Because the fact that she forced her way into the van tells me that she was really frantic that he was going to leave her. And maybe this had happened before. And we know it's happened now because, hello, he's in Florida and she is not. On a side note here, Gabby's family made a plea to Brian's family today via the lawyer. I shared the link to that. And after the lawyer read the letter, he answered some questions, and what he said actually changed a lot for me. When I came across this story a few days ago, I seen that it said that he lawyered up, and my impression, or how I took it, was that he lawyered up before her parents even reported her missing. But then everybody was talking like as if he had lawyered up because he had found out she was missing and the cops wanted to talk to him. Okay, we know that Nicole, her mom, texted Brian and his mother and got no response on the 10th, and then she filed her missing the next day. And this lawyer today very clearly said that the same day the mom filed the missing report, that evening, officers went to Brian's home and immediately was given a contact to a lawyer, which means that my initial impression was right, that he lawyered up before, this is key, before she was even reported missing, or that he even knew she was reported missing. Like, he was already prepared. He had already hired one, already had a contact. They literally answered the door and handed them the paper to call the lawyer. Okay? That's huge. This wasn't a case of like, knock, knock, Brian, we want to talk to you about missing Gabby. And he's like, I'm going to remain silent and call my lawyer. This was, I already have a lawyer. Here you go. And she had just been reported missing just like a couple hours, maybe an hour prior. That's huge. In my opinion, absolutely huge. And it makes me wonder how long he would have held out. Like, if her parents just kept assuming that she had no service, if he would have continued to just drag this out, and for how long would he have dragged it out? And then it also goes back to this Yosemite thing, like, was that to buy more time? and make them think that they had no service for X amount of time? I don't know. I don't know if it was him in that text. I have a feeling it was. And so do her parents, and they know her best. So there's that. I think it's rather funny that everybody seemed kind of shocked at how calm he seemed in the video. I mean, what did you expect him to act like? You think he was going to be like running around, acting a fool, ripping off shirts, screaming, cursing, or whatever? Again, we don't typically act our normal selves in front of cops. We're taught to cooperate, excuse me. At least most of us have been. I was not like the least bit shocked by either of their demeanors. Many people are saying that Brian came across as a narcissist, which in my opinion is such a highly overused word in crime cases. Not every crime or possible crime means the person or persons is a narcissist. If we can just kind of chill out with that label, that would be great. Others said that, calm and collected, as I was saying earlier, and so this is making them think that, he didn't do anything to her. You watch one thing, you get one thing. Somebody watches the same thing, and they get something else. That's just the way it works. The incident is really important in the context of the story, and the footage does help, but to come to a conclusion that he didn't do anything because in this footage he appeared calm and collected or sweet or kind or respectful, I think that's a bit much. As far as Gabby, people saw opposing things with her as well. Some say that she was like an overly emotional hot mess, unstable wreck, who was like the aggressor, who was this, that, and the other. And so they started thinking like maybe she killed herself, maybe she walked off and wanted him to leave her. Others think she looked terrified and broken, and they think that she looked terrified and broken because of Brian. So again, you're going to have different opposing views on this footage. We all can't be right. So we don't know what their relationship was like before this incident, other than that they were or are engaged, depending on who's speaking, because her mom said they called it off, but remained dating. But they told the police that they were engaged. Honestly, dating or engaged, I said it last night, tomato, tomato, because they were traveling across country, living together in a van. Does it really matter what the title was? No. It's still unconfirmed which days Brian went back to Florida in August and for how long and what for. We know he did go there, but there's the conflicting info that her uncle wrote 8/13 to 8/23, but there's an article that's saying that he went from 8/17 to 8/23, and her mom implied that he had moved her stuff into a storage unit. But the article that said that he went from 8/17 to 8/23 said that he moved stuff from storage to his parents' house. So we don't know which one it is. Regardless, why did he even leave her behind in the middle of this cross-country trip to move anything that anyone or someone could have done for him and pay money to fly home just to move items? That doesn't make sense. There's more reasons why he went back. And the 13th makes more sense to me than the 17th, because again, that was the day after this incident, and maybe they weren't okay, and maybe he was really pissed off that her actions caused the cops to show up, etc. And so he was like, you know what, screw this shit, I'm out of here. And he took off and he left. That makes more sense to me than him going a couple of days later. Some people are thinking that she may have killed herself and he was traumatized and panicked and took off. Okay. It doesn't really explain leaving the area, returning home, and still refusing to speak, because any evidence that she killed herself would be washed away and destroyed at this point. So it's only hurting him to remain silent. I can get on board with this if he had left out panic, out of panic and trauma, but after a few days came forth and let somebody know. I mean, this is a woman he supposedly loved, that he was supposedly engaged to for at least a time, and a woman that he spent 2 months with in a van. To not want to help her family in any way, shape, or form seems so spiteful. albeit a lawyer is a smart move, and it does not automatically mean he's guilty, but in this particular circumstance, this is a very special circumstance. It's very suspect. Like, if you really did witness your fiance killing herself, you're gonna just stay quiet all this time and leave her behind, her body? What? I don't know. That just doesn't sound right. Last night I went over other theories again, and everyone I threw out, it still went back to he left. He left. He not only left, but he left with her van, a van they shared together for 2 months. It makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. I tried every which way to turn this, flip it upside down, right side up, and it just keeps going back to he left. I discussed several theories in that video, so make sure you listen to it if you didn't yet. And I know that I said that earlier, but I'm saying it again to remind you. I'm willing to withhold accusations, and I have been. I'm willing to throw him a bone. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I just keep coming back to him, and I just can't come up with any reasonable explanation for leaving her behind and not alerting anyone, and then continuing to not want to locate, as her family is literally begging you to help them find her. Begging. Okay? You left behind your petite 22-year-old young girlfriend who may or may not have mental health issues. She was in basically your care, and when you get married, it's to have and to hold, sickness and health. Okay, you know the vows, right? If you couldn't even care for her and keep her safe, or make sure that even if she wanted to stay behind, that you told somebody, how would you ever been a husband to her? Because even if she wanted to stay behind, or she stormed off because she was mad and then she disappeared, the right thing to do, because she was with you, would be to let somebody know that. Let the officers there in that town, or her parents, oh my God, I can't find her, I don't know what to do, etc. He was partly responsible for her as her significant other in him being, the bigger person, the male of the relationship. Typically that's how it works, right? If the relationship was over, I think she would have taken her van and left him out there, not the other way around. I just don't see her like, we're over, go home, take my van, leave me out here in a place I don't know without any means of transportation. Please, Brian, oh please, go. That doesn't make any sense. In their incident, as a way to calm her down, he mentions that he took her keys and tried to lock her out of her own van. That is a sure way to not calm things down. That only intensifies it. I mean, do you expect her not to get pissed off that you locked her out? I think anybody would be pissed. I'd be like jumping through the window too. Give me my damn van. Where are you going, bro? If she left him, why not tell someone? Right? Okay, so let me say this slowly because I want this to sink in. If she left, why not tell someone to cover your ass? Like you are using a lawyer now to cover your ass. The entire point of the lawyer is so he's not wrongfully accused. But by coming forth right from the start, if she killed herself or if she left him, whatever, to avoid being wrongfully accused, like what's happening in the court of public opinion, it would save money and it would save his ass at the same time. You're using the lawyer to cover your ass. When the truth, if you did nothing, right, and she left, she wanted to be left, she was abducted or whatever, would be covering your ass. And I hope that makes sense to you. Let it sink in and process that. Okay? One more time. Why not tell someone to cover your ass if nothing happened bad by your hands? Like you were using a lawyer now to cover your ass. It would have been a hell of a lot cheaper to just come up with a story and tell somebody, but at minimum tell them that she disappeared to cover his own ass. Now he's just making himself look more suspect. Okay, so moving on. If this was an accident, again, why not tell anyone? I can't make that any more clear. Clear yourself. Tell them exactly the location of where the accident occurred. Explain that you were traumatized and you didn't know what to do, and get somebody to help retrieve her body from wherever she fell from. If she ran off with someone, that's even more reason to speak up too, because then you can point a finger towards somebody else and be like, I don't know, she left with this dude, this is what he looks like, this is what his name was, this is what he drove, and shift the focus to somebody else, not him. Like, I don't know, bro, we had a falling out, we broke up, she met some dude at the bar near the campsite, and his name was Joe Schmo, and they left in a white Ford Bronco. You need to go find it. And then why didn't you call? Well, I didn't call because I was pissed off and I knew she was okay, so I was just like, screw it, I'm going back home and I'm taking the van. He didn't do that. I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but we have to keep this in mind. He didn't do that. End of the day here, Brian knows. He does. He knows where Gabby is. There's no denying that, because he took the van. Okay, which means that he did meet up back with her when he got back from Florida, because she was there with the van, he flew home, and then he flew, back, so he got the van. So he did meet up with her, okay? And so he was in her presence. Whatever happened from there, he knows. He is the only one who knows where Gabby is. And at the end of the day, that's what we have to keep in mind. And he knows what happened when he returned, and he knows. He just knows. And I think I'm just keep saying that because it's I think this is what's making her parents just so frustrated, right? You know that he knows, and he's refusing to help you in locating her, dead or alive, right? So it's I'm frustrated. Could you imagine what her parents must feel like? Oh my goodness. Some believe that this is a publicity stunt, but I'm going with no. You don't stage all of this and pay for a lawyer. And let me tell you, that lawyer is definitely expensive now because it is such a high-profile story, and those retainers and fees add up big time. Although people have done crazier things and things like this before, at this point, I think one of them would come forward and be like, psych, it was all a publicity stunt, I'm okay, don't worry. And that hasn't happened, so cross that off the list. Gabby going off the grid doesn't really make sense. I mean, why not keep the van then? And if not, then how is she traveling around and getting food? I mean, she does need to eat. No one in the park or nearby stores have seen her? Maybe they have, we just don't know yet, but why? Why was she going off the grid? And for what reason would she go off the grid in the middle of a cross-country trip with Brian when they had a whole itinerary and plan that included the both of them going place to place? Do you really think that he's so dedicated to helping her disappear at her request, and that he would sacrifice himself to remain silent and become a suspect to allow his girlfriend to go off the grid? You think he was just like, oh, okay, you want to go off the grid? No problem, honey. I'll see you later, okay? Maybe I'll see you in 10, 20 years, and then we'll meet back up again. Okay, I'm going to take the van and go back home, okay? All right, bye. No. That didn't happen, okay? It didn't happen. He's not so dedicated to her that she went off the grid and he was just like, okay, bye, see ya. Some of the theories are really far-fetched, even bringing up TV shows and books and movies, wondering if he got an idea from one of them and then, of course, acted it out. Here's one theory I thought of, but it's most likely not true, and I don't actually fully believe it myself. And it is often far-fetched land, which I never usually do. But what if the day after the incident, Brian did, for some reason, get into an altercation with Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner and did end up hurting them, and Gabby knew it. And maybe he flew home so that he can leave that area for a little bit. He put her in the hotel in Salt Lake out of fear and love for him. She stood there. She was terrified. She was waiting on him. And maybe when on his travels, he disposed of a weapon. And then when he returned, Gabby was really freaked out and was worried, that she may out them. And so, of course, he ended up hurting her too. I know that sounds crazy, but crazy things like this have happened before. It's actually really amazing what our imaginations can do when we have such little information or facts. And if you look in all these groups, some of these speculations are really imaginative. That's for sure. If these two cases, the murders of Kylan and Crystal, and then the disappearance of Gabby, are not connected with all these coincidences going on, well then dang, put this on the list of places I don't want to visit anytime soon, because what the heck is going on out there? I'll tell you one thing. If Brian reads any of these groups, he'd have a laundry list of defense choices. But let's try to stay in reality here while we're wrapping this up. Okay? Reality. Let's come down from reality and from the high emotions of the case. Okay? Brian and Gabby in a van. Sounds like a Dr. Seuss book, the way I just said that. Brian and Gabby together in a van. Gabby is missing. Brian is not. And the van is not missing either. It seems, I'm just saying, it seems he cared more about the van than he did about her being gone or being left behind. In reality, that's what it seems like. He could have flew home. He could have and left the van. So he cared about the van. Why did he bring the van back? Where's Gabby? Where is Gabby? I hope Brian does the right thing. He does not need to speak with police, but he should, at least in the background, away from all the noise and heaviness of the public and media, and give her parents something, anything, even a little hint of something, of vicinity. I mean, even give them one state. Right now, they're going off the whole damn map of the country. Give them at least the actual state that you last saw her. Because we don't even know. Was it Wyoming? Was it Utah? Was it Oregon? Was it California? Was it Colorado? We don't know. So, you can't even give them that? You're going to seriously let this family search this entire country and retrace all of her steps? That's so cruel. That's just cruel. I really don't know how this family can control themselves to not show up to his house and drag him out. I know they can't, and it would get them in trouble, but holy heck. Well, I'm a big believer in lawyering up. As a parent, it would be so hard to not want to get my hands on him. I don't blame his parents for standing behind their son. At the end of the day, it's their blood. It's their son. They love him. And they may just really believe what he's telling them, regardless of whether it's true or not. And you can attack them, but you would likely do the exact same thing and make sure that your child isn't wrongfully accused. You can sit there and say that you wouldn't, but there's a good chance that you would. Now, if you're not a parent, you wouldn't understand this. If you are a parent, you should understand this. It's our child, okay? And if they believe it and they don't have any evidence to not believe it, right, then you can't blame them for standing behind him. Now, if there's evidence, that's a different story, okay? Because then it can change to, well, I still love my son, but I do think that he needs to pay the consequences of his actions, right? You can say, well, I'm just going to support you. I still love you, but I'm sorry, you need to go to jail because what you did was freaking horrible. But at this point, there is no evidence showing that he did anything criminally wrong. So, of course, they're going to stand by their son. And, it's the right thing to do for them. However, I think they need to consider here is that this could be flipped around, okay? Gabby's family is very desperate, and as parents, they should be able to sympathize with them, okay, and not want them to go through that pain. If they do know something, which we have to assume they do know something because he's staying there, that he had to tell them something, whether it was a lie or not, right? Final notes. It's sticking out to me that Gabby said she was worried about him leaving her in that body cam. I can't kind of shake that because that's what ends up happening. It's really kind of just bothering me. And she was very emotional, but I don't see a manic state personally. That being said, it could have been in the middle of an adrenaline crash from a manic state when we see her in the video, but I'm not sure I actually believe that. And he did seem a bit dismissive of her and her behaviors. And I can't really put my finger on why. And before I go, I'm going to actually read to you what her parents wrote to Brian's family today, that their lawyer had, read for them to the Laundrie family. It was addressed to Brian's parents. This is really hard stuff. I was so sad when I heard this today. We are writing this letter to ask you to help find our beautiful daughter. We understand you are going through a difficult time and your instinct is to protect your son is strong. We ask you to put yourself in our shoes. We haven't been able to sleep or eat and our lives are falling apart. We believe you know the location where Brian left Gabby. We beg you to tell us. As a parent, how could you let us go through this pain and not help us? As a parent, how could you put Gabby's younger brothers and sisters through this? Gabby lived with you for over a year. She was going to be your daughter-in-law. How can you keep her location hidden? You were both at Jim and Nicole's house. You were both happy that Brian and Gabby got engaged and were planning to spend their lives together. Please, if you or your family has any decency left, please tell us where Gabby is located. Please tell us if we're even looking in the right place. All we want is Gabby to come home. Please help us make that happen. And at the bottom it says Joe Schmidt, Nicole Schmidt, and Joe Petito, and Tara Petito. So, I'm kind of a loss of words, right? Because how do you read that or hear that as Brian's parents and not feel any type of need to want to help this family? And on a last note, this is on a last note, I promise. I keep seeing people going, oh, maybe it's not Brian that lawyered up. Maybe his parents did. Maybe they're not letting him talk. Maybe they're not letting him this. Maybe it was their... Listen, Brian is an adult. We're not talking about 14-year-old kids here. We're not talking about 17-year-old kids. We're not even talking about 18-year-old kids. We're talking about kids that are, young adults in their early 20s who were adult enough and mature enough to take a cross-country trip together. Okay? He's an adult. Doesn't matter what his parents want. I saw one person say, oh, maybe it was his parents' request that he come home. What? His parents' request? He's a grown man. He didn't have to listen to them. He didn't have to get a lawyer if it was their request. He doesn't have to remain quiet if that's what they want. If he wanted to speak, he can very well speak. He's a grown man. So can we please not try to shift the blame to his parents or like try to like play like, oh, he's just this innocent young guy who's just doing what his parents told him to do. He's a grown man, period, end of story. Old enough to be in the military, old enough to drink, old enough to travel the country. He's a grown adult. He can make his own decisions. If he had wanted to speak, he'd speak. That's just the way it is. And on that note, we're done for tonight. I'll probably see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye. This is an addition to the video. I just stopped recording and I've seen 2 updates. One is on Fox News. You can go take a listen yourself. And there are people who have gathered outside Brian's home in Florida, and they are driving back and forth on the road, beeping their horn, carrying signs too, and holding signs, and chanting, "Where is Gabby?" over and over and over again. Some were even on golf carts. And also his sister has spoken out. I told you that Nicole, Gabby's mom, said that she's the only one that's cooperated with investigators. Excuse me. And that she commented on a public post a day or 2 ago saying that she didn't know why her family was cooperating. Well, now she just basically said that she of course, and her family want her to be found safe, and that she's like a sister to her, and that her kids adore her, and that she's hoping that she'll be found and brought home safely, and that this is all a big misunderstanding. So she didn't say it is a big misunderstanding. She said that she hopes that it is a big misunderstanding. You can check that out if you Google it. It's on almost every news station right now. So I wanted to let you know that. All right. Bye-bye.